Hello, my name is Gordy Hogue and this is Community Connect. Each of us has stories that help us to understand and to explain our world. I have been very fortunate to have met many interesting people who have had a positive, profound impact on our community and far beyond. People who have had incredible life experiences and fascinating stories that help us to better understand our world. And they help us to connect with each other. And Community Connections is about those people and about their stories. And I'm sure that you will enjoy meeting these amazing, amazing people as much as I have. Thank you. Enjoy. Hello, my name is Gordy Hogue, and this is Community Connections. Welcome. Today's guest graduated from UBC Law School in 1963. And he was looking for a place to article, and he got an interview in White Rock. So he borrowed a car, and with his wife and young son, drove out to White Rock, went through that interview, and he was accepted to do his articling here, and he has really never left this community since then. He has contributed in so many ways through these many years. He has contributed for basketball, and he has a questionable left-handed hook shot. He is a lawn bowler. He was a politician. He was on city council for a number of years. And he's been practicing law all those years in our community and has made many friends. And he has many reflections on this community, and he's had a profound and positive impact on all of us. Welcome, Lorne Ginther.
Thank you, Gordon.
So what was it like driving out to White Rock that first time? What did you first see?
Well, I had been here before in the summer as a passenger, and having started drinking beer somewhere in the United States, I liked it. I mean, all I could say is that we were stuck on what's now called the hump, but at that time it was called the boardwalk for a long time for traffic. So it was in the middle of summer, obviously. But driving down, I remember those great standing arrows that used to point the way from the King George Highway to the city of White Rock. And I knew that if I found those, I'd be able to get here. And so it was a sunny day. And as I said, maybe more than 100 times, James is in the back seat in a bassinet, and Diane and I came down Johnson Road, and just as you go down the hill from Thrift Avenue, we both said, "Whoa, this would be a great place to raise kids."
Yeah. So, you talked about those signs we're pointing at, and those were big, 15 or 20 feet tall, white stucco signs that probably hadn't remembered in years. But yeah, those were really stuck out, were very appropriate. So you couldn't get lost finding us.
Well, no, I didn't. But maybe I could if I tried. But it was a splendid thing. Then we went down to Semiahmoo Park, where in the area where the bandstand is now. We had a picnic lunch and just, thought, wow.
So who interviewed you for articling?
It was Ken Thompson.
Yeah.
And but at that time the firm was called Thompson, Wilson, Baker and Steele.
Yeah.
And Ken was the one who started with Galt Wilson. Galt Wilson came out, went to law school here in British Columbia.
Yeah.
And but Ken was the one who interviewed me. He is the one that actually visited me in our 4-story walk-up apartment in an old house near the old King Edward School, High School, and the Centennial or Vancouver General Hospital. He was the one who met us there. Then he invited us down. But he was a real character. I shouldn't say a character. He was can't be forgotten. I mean, a lot of lawyers went through that firm, and they all remember Ken Thompson.
Yeah.
And I think it was because he was sort of a natural leader. I wouldn't say leader, but a natural boss. And he wanted to make sure that everybody did their work. Anyway, I'm going too fast.
Oh,
Well,
and you met Wally Opal there too, did you?
no,
Back in
no,
those days?
Wally was behind. Wally followed several years later, and I met him there after I had left.
Yeah.
So
Was that the
Wally,
only law? Was that the only law firm in White Rock at the time?
oh no, no, no. Ken Gray was here. Joe Oliver.
Joe
John
Oliver.
Oliver was the premier of the province, and Joe Oliver was a lawyer who would practice in Vancouver, and he started a practice. Oh, I don't know what that is. Well, we're going to ignore it.
Okay.
And Joe Oliver and Lorne Clare and Ernie, I can't remember his name right now, but I think I've got a cheat sheet that I had a branch office here. Lorne Clare was called to the bar earlier than me in New Westminster. And then maybe I can do, this was long before, George Wallace Bruce Fraser was a veteran, and he was a lawyer, and he practiced on Marine Drive.
He ended up practicing. He and Dad and Dr. Blades built what they called the medical legal building, and he was upstairs from there. And
Really? Okay. Well,
they were our neighbors on Oxford. We lived at the corner of Oxford and Thrift, and Fraser's lived just below us. And David Fraser was a babysitter of mine.
My gosh. Well, both David and Bruce Jr. Graduated from law school about the time that I did, and but they didn't want to come and practice in White Rock for some reason or other. I think there was a divorce between Bruce Fraser Sr. and his wife. Who else?
Yeah.
And I think there were harsh feelings of some kind. In any event, uh, May Steele, which was the third person in the Thompson, Wilson, Baker, and Steele. Glenn Baker was part of the firm, and May Steele. And I commented once to various people, it's an odd name for a lawyer. Who's your lawyer?
It is an odd name, yes.
May Steele. Well, maybe. What's her name? Anyway, I'm going sideways on you here. And there was a guy who had practiced before I got there, who I discovered had been one of the Canadian champion chess players. And I learned this only years later, and he had actually won the North American one. He'd gone down to, I think, New Orleans.
Wow.
And beat all the chess people down there. And I'll think of his name in a minute. But he was practicing, and then that was about it.
Well, you've written little articles, and you posted and talked about the community and how it's changed since you came here and over the years. Can you talk a little bit about your perceptions, and perhaps even referring to that article and that you put together, which I think was quite
okay. Well,
revealing.
I came in 1963, and I lived on Victoria Avenue at Cypress on the upper side, and across the street and over a house or two were Carol and Scott Kennedy. And we rented the house for $50 a month, and wasn't well heated or even heated at all, but it had a gorgeous view looking across the water towards Blaine and the Drayton Harbor. But there was a nice little path there was a path parallel between Victoria and Marine, parallel, and we could walk down there to Tingle's grocery store. The Bob Tingle ran that. He was, I think, also a veteran or nearly a veteran. And it was the only grocery store on that side of the boardwalk. And really, I think the best one on Front Street or Washington or whatever you want to call it at the time. And he was a I'm going to say, I'm going to jump right into it. The cashier I always thought was Mrs. Tingle, but no, she finally corrected me, saying, "No, I'm not Mrs. Tingle." And I immediately said, "Well, then you're an imposter." And she never forgot that. Years later, she hired me to do her will, so it wasn't a bad impression, obviously.
Obviously not. No.
There was a Ken, I don't know what Ken's last name. He was a butcher, and he was at the back of the store.
Was
Well,
that
I'm
a,
wrong, of
was
course.
that a red and white store? Was that what?
That was a red and white store.
Yeah, and there was an IGA in the west side of Marine Drive.
That's the McRae's, yes.
Yeah.
And I've told many people that wouldn't have known, but McRae's fell down one afternoon in 1968. And luckily nobody was injured, but that must mean that business was bad. It was about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Nobody got hurt.
Oh, good.
There was a lawsuit, and they sued. McRae sued the owner of the building, the city of White Rock, and Archie Everall, who was the building inspector. And that went on and on and on. But the lawyer didn't realize that in order to start an action against the city, you had to give them notice within 2 months of the cause of action, and you had to start it within 6 months. This is a very well-known lawyer at the time, and there was lots to be said that was good about it. But he was really the founder of the contingency fee motor vehicle thing actions, which have made a lot of people rich. His name, I'll give you his initials. Tommy Griffiths.
Tommy Griffiths.
Yeah. And but the McRae's succeeded against Archie Everall, which is really surprising. They lost against the city of White Rock. They lost against the owner, but they won against the Archie Everall because the judge found that he had not done careful enough inspections when the building was renovated or built or something like that. But Archie was an interesting guy too. And he eventually left and went to Prince George, where he loved to be because he loved to hunt and fish. Yeah. And I don't know whether his family name is connected with the Everall Street that we know now, but probably in some way.
Yeah, it probably is, yeah. So that's part of Marine Drive. What are your other recollections? And the little article you wrote covering off so much about our community.
Okay, well, there was Coney Island Fish and Chips down there, and that was run by Art and Mary
Higgins,
whose last name will come to me in a minute.
Higgins?
Higgins, yes. They just worked like hell,
yeah.
And that's where we got our fish and chips. At that time, there were lots of fish and chips along Marine Drive, but it was just the first fish and chip place. But to us, I went down and they gave fish and chips on a Friday afternoon to me, and I toted them home, and it was just heaven.
Yeah,
heaven. But then Mr. Bush had a drugstore there, but I think Mr. Bush first was on what we now call West Beach, and then moved and bought property and built a pharmacy
Yeah.
on East Beach there, and lived above it. Above it, the building is still there standing.
Yeah.
Going east on that, uh, there were sort of apartments, or at least low-rise apartments and cafes, but mostly surviving on the summer fish and chip business for people like you and I, because I used to go down, convince the kids it would be fun to play hopscotch on that beach when the tide was out. And then, of course, when the tide was in, I just drowned them. But it was great because it's the softest sand.
Oh yeah.
Brendan Mickey told me that the softest sand used to be out near the pier, but I didn't experience that. She theorized that when the breakwater was built, that it sort of interfered with the flow of water and sand along the beach there, and therefore it became a bit stony.
Uh-huh.
That's and she was raised here, as you know,
Yeah.
and her dad was the station master, I believe,
Yeah.
and her mom just it was last year or a year ago had her 100th birthday. You were there,
Yeah.
and gosh, she was just so bright and lively, and gosh, just amazing.
Yeah.
Anyway, I can't remember going east there because a lot of the buildings, a lot of the places have been.
Was that where Bill Hodgson had his 5 to $1 store in there?
Bill, who?
Hodgson, who was
I don't know.
there
I
was
know that you go far enough now to the east, you go past Finley Street. Oh no, there was a little cafe on the east side of Finley or Maple Street, I guess. And there was a cafe there because I sued somebody over that cafe, and but I can't remember what was down there. Further down, there was a motel,
Yeah.
and the lady who owned it used to curl with Diane.
No. And there was
So,
the bowling alley was down there at one point as well.
oh yes, yes, that right, yes, and but the lumber yard.
Yeah.
What was the name of that?
There was Langland's Lumberyard.
Langland's lumber yard. Yes, now that's the Italian
Yeah.
restaurant,
That's La Baia.
La Baia.
Yeah.
Yes, and going east from there, the A&W had not come, but the theater was there, and Petrovich, I think, was the guy who owned it,
That's right.
and he was there making sure that the place was quiet so people could hear. But kids are kids, and he would admonish them, but they couldn't help being kids. Oh my gosh!
It wasn't the Players Club right next to it, and then the little restaurant on the corner as well. So as you headed east,
the Players Club, I thought it was further down from there. I thought it was up over the, where the was it? It wasn't Village Market. There was a grocery store up on Columbia, and I keep calling it Finley, but I think it may be Maple. Oh, Maple Grocery.
Maple. Yeah, Maple. Yeah.
Yeah, there was that. But I thought that it was uphill by the time I got there.
It was.
They had lots of jokes about that theater because sometimes, in order to, if you had to go off stage left, the only way you could come back on stage right was to go outside the building, go all the way back around to the other side, so you can get in, coming in stage right.
Yeah, in through a phone book.
You probably remember that better than me. But by the time I had come here, they had started having plays in up in their present site, on that present site. And it was, I gather, a former Jehovah's Witness
That's
hall,
right.
and they renovated it for the purpose of.
Yeah, and they moved it. They moved it from down on was right down near Five Corners, just to the east of
Oh,
Five Corners.
really?
Right now, where part of City Hall is, on the
Oh, really? Well,
southwest corner of City Hall. It was the Jehovah Witness Hall. And
yes. And I'm skipping over Five Corners because it didn't really. I know a member of Mrs. Brake's, a little rural commercial center there, because I knew that because one of the jobs I had to do when I was at Thompson, Wilson, Baker, and Steele was um, to boot Mrs. Christensen out of her jewelry store uh, because she was in arrears of payment of her rent. And so it's kind of formal procedure, and I did all the stuff, got all the documents done, which I had to. Nobody else in the office knew how to do it. That's why they gave it to me. And I got into the place. I didn't have a key. I guess I must have had a key because I don't remember breaking in. And Mrs. Christensen, thank goodness, was not living there because she was usually she used to sleep in the back. And in the back there was a pile of liquor uh, paper bags in the liquor control board. No bottles, but just bags. I don't know, but so I guess she had developed a hobby that nobody else knew about. But I had to seize all the jewelry and um,
how far was that from Shaw's Feed and Seed?
I think it was right next. Shaw's Feed and Seed was in the end.
That's right.
I
Yeah.
think. And then was Mrs. Christensen's. And then I got a call in the middle of the night. This is at Christmas time, by the way. And a policeman, George Monk, phoned me. He was part of the White Rock detachment. And he said, Lorne, you've had a burglar in your shop. I said, how could they do that? So I went down and he said, look at this. And he was right. Somebody got a back window open, got in, and I don't know whether we got there. No, he had already left. But I couldn't find anything that was missing. So who knows? And all the paper bags were kind of intact. So, and I'd taken all the money. There wasn't much money, but anyway, that was Five Corners as I remembered it. Bruce Hall used to have a grocery store. I mean, a furniture store on that corner, Five Corners on Buena Vista at the very crest of the hill.
Yeah.
And Charlie McLaren's old partner, whose name I would remember in
Milwaukee.
Milwaukee, yes. He had a pharmacy there, and he used to always have coffee at, I guess it must have been Saunders Five Corner Cafe, which later became Franklin's Five Corners Cafe, and and a lady that I took out for 4 or 5 years, she was scared of Milwaukee, and but she got over it, and then she became not scared of anybody. After she filled out, she realized she had these things and she didn't have to bother with any guy. It doesn't matter how big they are. Anyway, and there was a Bank of Montreal there next over, and I can't remember what was in the rest going on the south side of Buena Vista at Five Corners. Star of the Sea was there. The Star of the Sea auditorium, was there when I came, and the Star of the Sea itself uh, was there, and there was eventually what was the grocery store at Five Corners?
It was an overweighty store, I think.
Overweighty, okay.
That's
Oh,
the
I
one that
see.
that's the one that burned down.
Yeah, that was well before my time.
Yeah.
Later it became a new car, Weldy Feedham, and
Yeah.
it had the
He and Jerry,
franchise there.
well, they feed
And
him Jerry Clifford, I think.
yeah, Clifford, Phyllis Clifford, yeah, was part of the original Players Club people, and she did a lot of parts in the Players Club, but she also ended up working at the elementary school as a secretary.
Oh, did you?
And they always wonder how she got through, because the teachers are supposed to put comments on the um, report cards for the kids, and the secretaries used to have to type them. And she did an amazing. Oh, she said, easy. I just didn't type it all. I just shortened it down to a sentence or two, and that was it. So, I think she worked for the city for a while, and she was told by uh, the authorities that she was supposed to raise the flag, and she it was too cold for her, so she gave up that job and did something else. But
And I guess moving up Johnson Road, there wasn't a whole lot up there as you went up further. I guess the police station at one point was further up Johnson Road, I think, the
I
RCMP.
thought the RCMP was upstairs.
Yeah, that was upstairs. Yeah,
Artwell used to have a grocery store
yeah,
on the east side in that first block,
yeah.
and I think they lived upstairs too.
Yes,
But I
they
can't.
did.
But I think further towards that was where Bruce Hall's. I think Bruce Hall's furniture stores went right to the corner. But that's just my fickle imagination.
And wasn't there a motel further up? Was it Cedar Lane or something motel?
I don't think so. I think the motels that I remember are on State Road, and that sounds familiar for one of those.
And was Midway Motors there?
Midway Motors was still there, and the hallway up top.
Yeah.
I heard about a story which is obviously false about your father dancing on the tables when they had a party.
Probably not false. Probably.
Certainly, but what people will dream up. I think Trump's bad. These people have spread rumors about doctors.
It's probably true.
And I remember going to a meeting. I was a staunch liberal, and I still am, to watch Bill Van der Zalm, who was a liberal nominee, to give a speech there. And somebody said, well, Mr. Van der Zalm, what about capital gains? And he said, I'm going to abolish it. And Bill Van der Zalm was probably a remarkable guy, and he was in many ways. He knew a lot about gardening, but he did not know there wasn't any capital gains then. There was a proposal to have capital gains, but there was no. But he was going to abolish it. And I sort of crept out the back there saying, he probably got elected. He was good at
that. Probably did, yeah. It's nice when you can abolish something that's not there yet.
Yes, and then later Hardy Gardens Buckerfields owned Hardy Gardens, and there was a long piece that went back eastward from Johnson Road along the extension of Russell.
Yeah.
And they had the back was, it was a great place for a garden shop.
Yeah.
And there was a guy who was a son of a pharmacist in New Westminster. He had inherited some money and some moxie, but he ended up buying it, and he may even have built it too. But his name was Tom, but I can't remember Tom's last name right now. And um, and I wanted to buy that building because I thought it would be a good place to have a law practice. And but Tom just said no. Every time the Hardy Gardens miss a payment, then Buckerfields picks it up. So there's no chance that I'm going to be able to sell it to anybody. So anyway, um,
So where do you, how do you feel about the development of the community over the past 50 years or so? Do you,
I love it.
yeah, and
I love it. I think, well, first of all, I loved how it was when I came. I was a relative latecomer, but I loved it. On the other hand, I love what's been done now because, you know, one of the things about being more or less late in the development, uh, you get to ask a lot more from people who are building tall buildings.
yeah,
I don't have a problem with tall buildings. And I've said this many times. I'm going to say it again. When the tallest building for a long time was the one built by Bill Boltham in 1970 on uh, North Bluff, just north of us, north of I'm on Russell,
yeah,
and right north of us is a 12-story building,
yeah,
and it's a rental.
yeah.
And of course, they changed the law so you could subdivide air into owned property. And so the market went out of leasing and people were buying up property to build these tall buildings. Well, Don McDonald was um, wrong sometimes, but right in one thing he did or proposed. And I was against him to begin with, but he persuaded me, and I looked at the facts, and it seemed he proposed. He didn't do it himself, but we all went along with it. He proposed that we down zone all of that property there, so the people who wanted to put every square inch in building would have to come to us and make a contribution to the city for all the future pressure on all of the stuff that had to be rebuilt or re-engineered, like the sewage system, for goodness sakes.
And
And
that was the development cost charges that were introduced. I remember those days, and that was quite controversial, but it was so important because the
oh
city would
yes,
not have been able to function. It was so important that that did happen. I think that was one of his
well,
most
Don was a
significant
hothead,
contributions.
and there are times you couldn't help but like him. But
Yeah,
I remember being in Hal Sinkler's house, where Helen had us over. Scotty Clements was on council at that time. He was an air pilot. He's a pilot. He flew the first uh, jet from Canadian Airlines into Beijing. He was very experienced. He told us a very hair-raising story. But Don McDonald got into such a shouting match that I was gonna punch him. I mean, and I wasn't gonna stop punching him either because he's bigger than me, but I was faster, of course. Anyway,
and you had a left-handed hook,
pardon me.
and you had a left-handed hook.
That's right, and that's right. It's surprising. Some people don't expect it to come from that direction.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, it says my battery's running low.
Well,
Uh,
I just remember I've had the privilege of sitting on council with you for a short period of time, and I recall three things that you said that have stuck with me. And I remember you saying that your dad said that you had to focus on something, and he had the example of a magnifying glass. And he said that if you hold it here, it'll make a difference, but if you keep moving it around, you won't make a difference. And people are like that, so you've got to focus. Second thing I remember you saying, and somebody was quite angry, and council had voted against them, And as the person was walking out of council, you said to him, next time, maybe we'll be on the same side. And I think that sort of softened him in terms of being able to look at. And the other thing that I remember you saying is that it might have been in an in-camera meeting or some other time, but you said you can say no, or you can make it so hard that it can't happen anyway. Two ways to say no. And those three things have stuck with me all those years in terms of, and I think those were all pretty insightful comments that you made along the way.
Well, thank you, Gordon.
So thank you very much for being a guest and sharing the history and your experiences in the community. It's been a delight to have you growing up and learning about our community and contributing so much and making such a positive difference. So thank you so very much.